It's Mr. Benson here with a video to explain the next steps as far as expanding goes. So we've looked at fairly simple expansion involving expanding single brackets, although we might have had expressions or equations with more than one bracket in them. But things can get a bit more complicated than that. So what we're going to look at is expanding binomial factors, and the first thing you're probably going to ask is, what is a binomial? Now it's pretty easy. Now when we're talking about factors, factors are the numbers which multiply together to give you a multiple. So for example, the factors of 6 are 2 and 3. They're two possible factors. So anything that we're multiplying together can be a factor. All that binomial means, now bi, like the we used to in bicycles and things like that, means 2. So we're talking about things like this. This is a binomial factor. It contains 2 terms. So that's all it means. When we're expanding binomial factors, it means that the two factors we're multiplying together are both binomials. And so I've got an example down here at the bottom of the page for one of those, and I'll talk about some techniques for expanding them. Now remember, we've started off with simple expansion of a single bracket, and we had techniques like the crab or the claw, or crab claws as they get called in full, and we'll see why in a minute, to expand these. So all we've got to remember here is that everything outside the bracket gets multiplied by everything inside the bracket. So we get, in this case, 2 times x, and then plus 2 times 1 is 2. So that's simple expansion. Now with binomial factors, it's just only slightly trickier because we've got to remember to multiply everything. Now one technique that is useful for doing this is to use the claws again. Now we start off with our first term in the first bracket, and we're going to draw the claw across into the second bracket. So this is telling us that the first x term needs to get multiplied by x in the second bracket and by 2 in the second bracket. Then we're going to draw a second claw, which reminds us that the second term in the left-hand bracket has to get multiplied by everything as well. Now you see that this looks like a proper crab claw now, where we've got the upper part and the lower part, and so that's where the name comes from. Now there are several different ways of reminding us how to do this properly, several different techniques for doing it properly, and it doesn't really matter what you do, they're all going to work. Okay, so if I'm following the crab claws approach, I'm just going to write out the multiplications. Now I'm going to do this the long way at the moment. So I can do x times x, that's my first one, plus x times 2, that's my second. So I've done the first 2 multiplications here, then plus 1 times x, and then plus 1 times 2. Now it's optional whether you do this step. You can actually do it, a lot of it in your head, and that's fine, because I mean 1 times x is 1x. It's not a difficult thing to do. So where you'll often jump to, if you choose to do it that way, is you'll actually end up at the second line. So x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. That's going to be plus 2x. 1 times x is just going to be plus 1x, and 1 times 2 is going to be plus 2. And then we can simplify this slightly, so we've got x squared, 2x plus 1x is going to be 3x plus 2. Now remember that these were the only like terms. So x's are like with x's, but they're not like with x squared terms, and they're not like with numbers. So this is as simple as it gets. Now, another way of doing this, another way of reminding us of what we need to do, is what's called FOIL. Now FOIL is first, outer, inner, last. And what it's telling us to do is that we need to multiply x. Let me just rewrite this for us. We just need to multiply the terms in this particular order. So first, the first two terms in each bracket, well, that's x times x. The outer terms in each bracket, so this is going to be x and 2. So we've got plus x times 2. Inner is these inner 2 here, so we've got plus 1 times x. And then last is the last two terms, which is plus 1 times 2. Okay, so I've ended up with a slightly, no, in fact I've ended up with basically exactly the same as if I was using crab claws. So again, x squared, I'm just going to go straight to the plus 3x plus 2. That's the same answer, and it's really a very similar technique. There's another one that I've never used, but you might like to use, which is where you write the two terms at right angles to each other. So let's draw up a bit of a grid. So our first one is x plus 1. So those are the two terms in the first bracket, and then we've got x plus 2 are our second terms, and all you do to do this technique is just multiply everything across. So x in the left-hand column here multiplied by x is x squared. X times 1 over here is plus 1x. X up here multiplied by plus 2 gives us plus 2x. And then plus 2 times plus 1 is just plus 2. Then you add it all together and you end up with the same answer. So that's another way of multiplying binomial factors. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples of these. So a couple of quick examples here. X plus 2 and then 2x minus 3. Now with this one here, I might, let's say I'm going to do crab claws to remind me how to do it. So I'll use that to remind me, whoops, I've mucked them up already. Use that to remind me what I'm going to do. So firstly, now I'm going to do this fairly quickly. So x times 2x is going to be 2x squared. X times negative 3 is going to be minus 3x. 2 times 2x is going to be plus 4x. And 2 times negative 3, well 2 3s are 6, but because of the negative and the positive signs, we're going to end up with minus 6. Then combining like terms, now the only like terms are the x's, negative 3 plus 4 is 1. So I've got 2x squared plus 1x, or I could just write plus x minus 6. Okay, I just want to show you another way you could write these out actually. I think this is the way that I learned how to do it when I was at school, but you know, again, it doesn't matter how you do it. Remember that we're multiplying everything in this bracket here by everything outside the bracket. Now it just happens that everything outside the bracket is this binomial factor. I could write it as minus x multiplied by 2x minus 4 plus 3 2x minus 4. So I've taken what was a double bracket expansion and I've turned it into two single bracket expansions, and we all know they're pretty easy. So I can just work through this. Now I could use my crab claws or just think about it carefully using FOIL. So I get minus 2x squared. Now I've got two negative signs, so I'm going to get plus 4x plus 6x. Now I'm going to get minus 12 in this case. So it simplifies. So the x squareds, that's all we've got. We've got plus 10x minus 12.